Hey, I'm golf broadcaster Matt Adams. The updated and expanded second edition of my book, The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments, is now available. Readers can expect to march with Arnie's Army at the 1960 U.S. Open, relive Jack Nicklaus's remarkable 1986 Masters win, and be amazed by the Tiger Slam. The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments. Pick it up where fine books are sold, including BarnesandNoble.com and Amazon.com.
This Day in Sports History. Hey, and welcome back to This Day in Sports History. It's May 23rd, and on this day in 1958, Wilt Chamberlain turned pro. But he was not headed to the NBA. Wilt Chamberlain had been the dominant force that everybody thought he would be in college. In his 2 seasons as a Kansas Jayhawk, and a reminder here that this was the era when freshmen were not allowed to play on the varsity team, he averaged close to 30 points a game. This is also the era before the shot clock and the three-point arc. He had led Kansas to the national title game a few months prior, losing in a triple overtime thriller to North Carolina. But Wilt was frustrated with the college game. He faced triple teams nearly every night. Teams would hold the ball on offense to shorten the game. The game just was not challenging him in the way that he felt he needed to be challenged to get ready for the NBA. So on this day, Wilt gave up his final year of eligibility at Kansas, and he turned pro. But he could not head to the NBA due to a rule in place at that time that prohibited players from playing until their college class had graduated. He and the Philadelphia Warriors, who owned his NBA rights, had to wait a year. So Wilt joined the Harlem Globetrotters instead, signing a $46,000 contract in June. He felt that life as a pro on the road would mimic and help him prepare for life in the NBA. It would certainly be a change from Kansas, because immediately after signing, he hopped on a plane and flew to Milan, Italy to join the team for the European Tour and eventually traveled to Russia for a barnstorming tour around the Soviet Union during a pretty heated time during the Cold War. Attendance for the Globetrotters rose dramatically with Wilt on the team, and he earned top billing from the start. He played with the Trotters for a season before joining Philly in 1959, but he would go back to play with Meadowlark Lemon and the others from time to time during his early pro days. In 1977, jockey Steve Cauthen was thrown from his mount during a race and was badly injured in a 3-horse accident. So a couple of things to know first. Cauthen was a 17-year-old wonderkind who was tearing up the horse racing world in his second year. He had raced a limited schedule the previous season, and he was still considered an apprentice, but he'd won an amazing 252 races in the first 5 months of 1977. On this day, Cauthen was riding a horse by the name of Bay Streak in a race at Belmont Park. Cauthen had piloted the colt to the front, and it looked like win number 253 was in the bag. But Bay Streak snapped his front leg and went down, tossing Cauthen. The horse running second tripped over Cauthen and went down, throwing its rider, Jorge Velasquez. A third horse hit Bay Streak and tossed his rider, Pat Day, to the turf. Velasquez suffered a broken ankle. Cauthen cut his right hand and also had a laceration above his right eye. He had been trampled as well. 2 horses had to be euthanized that day, unfortunately, and at this point in the year, Cauthen was well on his way, again as a 17-year-old apprentice rider, to the greatest season ever in terms of wins and purse earnings. His race injuries sidelined him for about a month, but then he was back at it. He ended the season with 487 wins to top the list of winners, but that mark fell short of the all-time record. He also won more than $6 million in purse money, which was a record at the time. Even brighter days were ahead for him the next season, and that's something that will come back up on this dish on the June 10th edition. Also on this day in 1977, about 600 miles to the west of an injured Steve Cauthen, golfer Jack Nicklaus lofted the trophy as the winner of his own golf tournament. So this is not like Jack just invited some friends over, bought a cheap trophy, and played a few holes. No, this is the Memorial Golf Tournament that Jack established in 1976 in his hometown of Columbus, Ohio. The tournament then, as now, was played on the Muirfield Village course that he designed. Rain wreaked havoc on the tournament that weekend, forcing a Monday finish to the event. Nicklaus beat Hubert Green by 2 shots to win the second iteration and called it his biggest thrill in golf. Now, this was from a guy who had already won 5 Masters green jackets, 4 PGA championships, 3 U.S. Open titles, and 2 British Open claret jugs. Nicklaus would win it again in 1984, becoming the first 2-time winner of the Memorial. And a couple of boxing matches to talk about. On this day, in the successive years of 1923 and 1924, Gene Tunney would climb into the ring with Harry Greb. In their first fight at Madison Square Garden, Tunney, from New York's Greenwich Village, and Greb, the Pittsburgh Wildcat, were fighting for the light heavyweight title that had been vacated. Greb was the betting favorite at 3-1. As Bert Sugar would later write about this fight in his book, The Great Fights, this was less a boxing contest and more like a back alley mugging. From the opening bell, Greb came out of the corner and leveled a headbutt to the nose of Tunney, breaking it. Despite the tremendous pain, Tunney fought on. Greb wasn't much of a rules follower either, if the headbutt was not an indication. He consistently used the technique of grabbing Tunney around the head and then delivering punches with the other. That got a warning from the referee, but no disqualification. The fight went 15 rounds only because Greb lacked a knockout punch, but he still won by decision. The crowd at the Garden was pro-New York, hence pro-Tunney, and so was the press. The New York Sun thought the decision was a sham, with one reporter writing, "If the rules of boxing were strictly enforced, Greb wouldn't last a round without being disqualified." There were calls for an immediate rematch, but it took another year, again on May 23, 1924, before that would happen. Back at the Garden for the second meeting, a capacity crowd was again on hand. Greb was again the betting favorite, but the referee on this night was well aware of Greb's tactics and issued a series of warnings in the pre-fight talk at the center of the ring. Greb did not like the rules and started demonstrating on Tunney just how unfair they were, nearly tossing Tunney to the mat in the process. Tunney stood stoic. Tunney was better prepared this time around, avoiding the bull charge headbutt to start the fight, but the referee spent a lot of time pulling the two apart, preventing the fight devolving into a wrestling match. Tunney took the lead in the early rounds, delivering a series of body shots, but then he began to tire. Greb regained control through the middle rounds, but he continued to box outside the rules. In the 12th, it got so bad that the ref paused the fight to yell at Greb, which turned into a shouting match that nearly had the fighter squaring off with the referee. In the 14th, Tunney regained control and after a couple of shots to the stomach of the champ, started delivering shots to his face. Greb nearly went down and survived until the bell. A bucket of ice water dumped over his head between rounds did not wake him up enough for the 15th. Tunney continued the pounding, but still couldn't put Greb on the mat. It didn't matter, though. The judges all agreed that Tunney had won the rematch and the light heavyweight title. So, this put Tunney on a path to move up to the heavyweight division, and in 4.5 years would lead to one of the most well-known boxing matches of the 20th century, his heavyweight title match with Jack Dempsey. And one final boxing match to talk about, this one more in brief. On this day in 1941, Joe Louis defended his heavyweight boxing title for the 17th time, beating Buddy Baer after a 7th-round disqualification. Baer, and that's spelled B-A-E-R, was the brother of Max Baer, who had been heavyweight champ in 1934. He's also the uncle of Max Baer Jr., who was most famously known for playing Jethro Clampett on the Beverly Hillbillies. And time now for today's non-sports Did You Know? Caterpillars have 7 times more muscles than humans. That's all for today. I'll have more tomorrow on This Day in Sports History. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history. But as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.